Let's go, girls. Welcome to Talk Wealthy to Me. I'm Michelle Taylor, founder of Women in Wealth. From breaking money myths to building wealth and achieving financial freedom, we're here to empower you to create your own path. Talk Wealthy. Now, join the conversation and let's change the way women think and feel about money. Okay, ready? Hi, ladies. Welcome back to Talk Wealthy to Me. I'm Michelle Taylor, your host. And first, Happy New Year. We are fresh into 2026, and that inspired me for today's episode. So, thinking about where I started and where I am now made me think, what would I tell myself, that 20-something-year-old that made all of the bad decisions? Or what would I tell myself as I was starting my first career? And I thought, if I had to start over tomorrow with my finances, fresh paycheck, no perfect setup, no, I should have known this earlier guilt, here's what I would tell that version of me. And I'm telling you this as someone who did actually have to start over and made a lot of terrible, questionable financial decisions. And I was just figuring it out. So keep that in mind. It's possible. And quite frankly, I think it's a gift that you give yourself. It's not a negative. It truly is a way to clean the slate and take away some of the overwhelm that you may be feeling. Maybe life feels a little bit chaotic or stressful around your finances. So this is your permission to give yourself the grace to start a fresh new chapter and go into 2026 with clear, clean vision and a plan. And who knows, this may be the power move that makes this your best wealth building year ever. I want you to remember something as you're starting over. You get to start over on purpose, and that is incredible in and of itself. If you think back to that day, if you're beyond that or have already had to start over once, sometimes you're doing that under a lot of pressure. By doing it with purpose, you're giving yourself the permission and the foresight of maybe some of the mistakes you'd have made prior. So today, we're going to walk through the exact order of operations that I would use to stabilize my life, stop the money leaks, build real wealth momentum, raise my earning power, protect the whole system so that it doesn't collapse the second that life gets lifey, and anything else that you may find that could throw you off track. If you're someone who would consider yourself in the stage of I'm building it, I'm learning it, I'm leveling up stage, or maybe someone who knows they're smart and capable, but still feels like money is just confusing or inconsistent, or even that you just need to burn the whole damn thing down and rebuild it better, perfect. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, and hopefully this will give you the reason to do it. Okay, so before we get tactical, I want you to hear this. A lot of people are one surprise away from chaos. And I know I've lived it, and there is nothing worse. The Federal Reserve found that 63% of adults right now said that they could cover a $400 emergency with cash or a cash equivalent, so no credit cards. But that means that 37% of people couldn't do that. And once that emergency amount jumps from 400 to 1,000, that statistic plummets. And that is staggering to me because let's get real. So many of the lifing moments are more than $400. And then what happens when that happens? Well, you're going to credit cards and digging a hole that is very deep and just creating a ton of stress for yourself. So if you're sitting there thinking, why do I feel like I can't get ahead? You are not alone. And take it from me, you can actually get ahead with just a few tweaks. And I say that with confidence because I had those feelings. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, panicked around paying bills or paying down debt or what to do. And I had to figure it out all by myself. But here's the difference between staying stuck and getting wealthy. Wealthy women are not waiting to feel safe to start. They're building the safety into the plan on purpose. And we need to do that, but we need to do it in layers and in steps like you would when you're building a house. And I say this all the time, and I'm sure that you've heard it in some capacity in your life as well. A strong foundation truly is where everything starts. So when you're building a house, you're not going to start with the roof or picking out paint colors before you build the foundation. So we're going to start there. Then we're going to talk through the structure, and then we're going to talk about the design and making it exactly what you want it to be and as pretty as possible. First things first, you have got to know your numbers, and you can actually know your numbers in as little as 10 minutes, let's say. So step 0 is we need a snapshot, not a spreadsheet that steals your joy or gives you anxiety to look at, but just a true snapshot. Grab your notes app or a pen and paper, that's my favorite, and write these things down. Your monthly take-home income or your best estimate. So after the 401k contributions or the health insurance, HSA, any of those things, what is your true monthly take-home that's hitting the bank? And then write down what your fixed bills are. So your rent, mortgage, car insurance, phone, things that if you don't pay, there's a repercussion, someone's knocking on the door, you can't make a phone call, those kind of things. And then write down what your minimum debt payments are. So if you've got credit cards, student loans, personal loans, things like that. And then write down everything else, but categorize them. So your groceries, gas, childcare, and then your current savings balance, your current debt balance. And that's it. Because here's what we know. When you don't know your numbers, every decision feels emotional. When you do know your numbers, decisions become strategic. Clarity creates calm. And money isn't stressful because it's math. Money is stressful because it's uncertain. And I also want to remind you, I have probably sat down with thousands of women in all walks of and stages of life. And I can tell you that so many of them, when I ask what their fixed expenses are, don't know. So don't feel embarrassed by that, but use it as a reminder that you want to do better than what the masses are doing, because that's the only way to get you where you want to go, where real change happens. Write those things down, and that is critical. Know those numbers, remind yourself of those numbers, and keep them in the back of your mind as you make decisions around your finances. Remember, that's where clarity comes from, not emotion. Okay, so once we have those numbers, we want to build the floor, the stability first, the foundation, right? And if I'm starting over, I'm not starting with investing and I'm not paying down any extra towards debt. I'm building a true floor. Why? Because when you don't have a floor, every little surprise can feel overwhelming or like a financial earthquake. So when you're building that floor, think emergency fund. And, women, we have a tendency to hold on to way more cash than we need. And that's a conversation for later. But for right now, think of anything. And this is going to be vastly different depending on what your life situation currently looks like. But if you're at 0, pick something attainable, $500, and then bounce it to $1,000. Then 1 month of expenses. That starter fund is the thing that is going to stop you from putting every flat tire on a credit card. Now, if you already have a good, strong foundation, and let's say it's $10,000, ask yourself, is that enough if I couldn't work or if something happened that took away my income for a few months? That's the real purpose here, is just creating a space where you've got the money, the cash available if something unexpected happens so that you're not falling behind or off track. because it's harder to get on track once you get out of habit and fall off. And then the next layer of the floor is really just kind of like a bill buffer. You just want to make sure that even if it's $200 or $300, you've got a buffer that will change your nervous system. So if that unexpected thing happens, not only do you have the fund to cover it, but there's still a little bit of a buffer there. So you're not waking yourself up in the middle of the night thinking about rebuilding. And then automation is really the third layer of this floor. If I was starting over, I would make sure that I was automating as much as I possibly could. Take the decision away from your future self and just set it up, because you're setting yourself up for success. Do it like you are allergic to your own willpower, because we all know how that can go. For example, on payday, X amount of dollars are going towards savings, X amount to bills, and then X amount to your minimums on debt. And because the most likely thing here is that you really don't need more motivation, right? You're doing the hard stuff now. You're listening to this. You're trying to do anything you can to improve your situation and to grow into 2026. So it's not about the motivation. It's more about the system that works even when you're tired or uninspired or unmotivated, because that happens to all of us. And then step 2, this can change everything, you guys, and that's high interest debt. So when you think about how numbers compound, Albert Einstein once said that it was the most powerful force in nature. And so when you're investing, it's working for you, right? But when you're in debt and it's high interest debt, not tied to an asset, it's working against you. And like I said a few minutes ago, if you're feeling like you can't get ahead, this is probably why. This is actually probably quietly robbing some of you, and you don't even realize it. There was a research report put out by Experian, and it showed an unsettling trend. The average credit card balance from June of 2024 to June of 2025 went up by about $200. So it's, a little bit under $7,000, and that might not seem like a lot. But when you think about that, that's just the average, which means there are people that are far higher than that. And everybody has a different appetite for debt and for paying that back. So that can be a huge, huge difference maker on how you're approaching all of this and how you're feeling. They also mentioned that the high APRs that we're facing are just staggering. Right now, the average is around 22%. So that is something that would prevent you from making any kind of progress. It is literally making it harder to pay down the debt that you owe and lining the company's pockets with money instead of our own. If you're carrying credit card debt, I want you to hear from me that this is not a moral failure, right? It's something that is a necessity for life, is to build credit. And obviously, there's going to be times that we carry debt. It's not a math problem. It's likely just an emotional backstory. Here's the approach that I'd use if I was starting over. And I remember all too well what it felt like when you had crushing credit card debt. So first, stop the bleeding. Challenge yourself to not put any new charges on those cards, if that's possible. So unsubscribe from any kind of auto temptation, anything that is automatically being billed. Try and unsubscribe from those things. Next, create a fun category that is real and not fantasy. You don't want to be so rigid on yourself that this just becomes grossly unappealing. And then look under the hood, figure out what is being charged to your card that you may not even know about. It happened to me actually a few weeks ago where I was doing this for myself and had signed up for something that was an auto renewal, but on an annual basis. I caught it in enough time that I didn't have it go through, thank goodness, but there are tools everywhere that will kind of audit your accounts. I think there's even one for the Apple users out there. you can go into your phone and it'll tell you if there's monthly subscriptions. Check those, make sure that they are still serving you. And if they're not, cancel them. And then keep the minimum payments on everything. You cannot miss a payment here if at all humanly possible. Not only is that going to set you back, but we need to protect your credit. And then choose one way to target your debt. So there's a lot of methods out there. You may have heard of some. The avalanche method, you tackle the highest interest rate first. And the snowball method, which is the smallest balance first, that is fast. As long as you take the money on the minimum that you're paying down and snowball it into the next. That is the one that I have loved using in the past more than anything because you could celebrate those quick wins, if you will. And it's motivation to keep going. Whatever you do, make sure you're sticking to it. At least give yourself, 3 to 6 months of time to really see it through. If you feel like it's not working, give it a chance and then pivot. And then create a payoff ritual. So every payday, a little bit extra is going towards that debt automatically. It will save you so much time and money. Chipping away at debt strategically, even when it's just a little bit extra, well, your future self will thank you for that. So let's say that you have a $3,000 balance on a high APR card. And if you're only paying the minimums, that will keep you trapped for years. If you commit to an extra, let's just say $150 a month, that changes the timeline dramatically. And the moment your first card dies, don't close it, just don't charge on it, and roll that payment that you were making over to the next one. Now, step 3 is kind of a little bit counterproductive to what I said earlier, and that is starting to invest. You don't want to start investing before you have an emergency fund, but the minute you do, let's start there. We want to start investing because I want you to build wealth and not just survive. Take it from me, you are never going to save yourself to the life that you want, whatever that looks like. Your money has to be working for you, even while you're sleeping. It's the only way to do it. Don't feel like you've saved money and now it's sitting in cash and it makes you feel good. It's not going to make you feel good in a year or two. And I love this statistic. Fidelity actually just reported that 71% of women now own investments in the stock market. And I don't know about you, but I'm happy with that number. Certainly, I'd love for it to be higher, but we are making huge strides here. The story is changing. Women are claiming their investor era like never before. In fact, I'll take a second here to tell you about a personal story. My cousin, who's like my sister, we talk every day, and she has been telling me with so much enthusiasm about how she started investing on her own every day, learning as she goes, opening a margin account, and having a really strong plan around what to do with those wins. And for her, it was paying herself back and into her business. But what an incredible testimony to how starting to do something and learning as you go with the tools that are out there can actually make huge impacts in what you're doing. So if you're just starting out, you want to start kind of in an order of operations. First, your workplace plan. That's the one where you're likely going to see a match. Now, I always say go up to the match and never above it. The match is, think of it like an 100% rate of return immediately. Don't sleep on that, ladies. If your employer is offering it, make sure that you're doing it. It is not optional. It is free money. Once you're doing that, consider a Roth IRA. Now, there are things around a Roth that you need to consider. As you make more, a Roth IRA becomes no longer an option with an asterisk there because we can do it. We just have to do it in a different way. But for everyone listening, that should be the second place that you're going if you're eligible. And the reason why is because all of those dollars are growing and they come out tax-free. That is something that you don't want to miss out on. Here is the thing. Consistency around these future you accounts are going to matter. The next place is a taxable brokerage account. And you don't need someone like me or an investor, wealth manager to do that for you. You can start small, do it on your own. Robinhood or Charles Schwab, pick your poison. But this is where in these accounts that we can build flexibility and long-term wealth outside of retirement rules. It's still almost liquid, where if you need it, you can get to it and not pay a penalty. So I love this. And this is a great place to start with even $25, $100, $2,500, whatever it is, you want to start. So as you're doing that, I want you to think through how you're investing those dollars. And this is for educational purposes only, obviously, but you want to think about the whole market and not just one hot stock. I do love the idea of investing in companies that you're interested in or believe in, but you don't want to do everything there. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure that you're diversified. And then think about your time horizon. Think about it being long. As you're investing, you want to pay attention to short and mid and long, but those long time dollars and those investment dollars, those are the ones that you can be really risky with because you've got the time to recover. You want to make sure that you're setting up automatic contributions, even if they're small. And you want to make sure that you're ignoring the noise. There's so much of it. And just remember that news is there to sell themselves and suck you in. So if they're telling you the sky is falling, more than likely, it's a great time to start investing or invest more. Don't let the emotion rule your investment strategy. And I want to say this in the most straightforward way possible. You do not need to be an expert to be an investor. You need to be consistent, and that's it. And if you are new and confidence is kind of tricky in this space, don't check your accounts daily. Check them monthly. Your money is going to go up and down. That's what it does. But if you know yourself well enough to know that that may scare you, don't look. If you are seasoned and understand, certainly then look more often because that is only going to make you a more informed investor. Your money really doesn't need your anxiety. It needs your patience and your planning. Okay. I want to make sure that we're talking about increasing your income. And for a lot of people listening, that may sound great, but then you're like, how am I going to do that? Well, obviously, side hustles, that's a great place to start. But what if you are an employee and you're working your way up a corporate ladder? That changes everything because getting paid more essentially is up to someone else. But that doesn't mean you don't have a say in it. Because we can build a spending plan or a budget beautifully, but if the engine is too small, you're always going to feel squeezed. You can't outwork income that isn't enough. The Bureau of Labor Statistics just reported that in Q4, women's median weekly earnings were about 83% of what men's are. And listen, that's not something that we are in control of entirely. They also say that for workers that are aged 25 to 34, so a lot of the women that are just starting out or, a few years in, they're earning about 95 cents for every dollar a man is earning. And that's actually a big improvement, but it's still less. And it's still something that we may feel not in control of, but we can do a little bit here to control our destiny. So your strategy around all of this needs to include your earning power. If I'm starting over and talking to the 20-something version of myself, I would pick a 90-day income plan that feels really good. And what that would include would be a skill that could potentially raise my value for my employer. Think data and analytics, sales, project management, negotiation, AI tools for productivity, certifications that would directly translate into a higher pay. And once you think through those things, document your wins every single week. Because when you're asking for a raise, you can't just bring vibes. You need to bring your receipts. And then ask for a number. Don't say, oh, I'd love a raise. Say, I'm targeting X based on the value that I'm producing. This is going to require a little bit of research on your part. Talk to your friends, peers, online research, Glassdoor. All of these things are at your fingertips. But find out what the norm is and what you can expect to ask for. And don't go in guns blazing, asking for a massive increase. Go in asking for something that's going to be meaningful and hard for your employer to ignore. Maybe say something like, I love the work that I'm doing here, and I want my compensation to reflect the results I'm delivering. And I want to really build a career with this company. Based on my impact in these areas that we talked about before, I'm targeting X. What would we need to see over the next 90 days, maybe even 60 days to make that happen? Now, one of two things are going to happen. They're going to come back and say, I can do that, or here's the plan, or they're not. Don't panic because you're prepared. A wealthy woman always has options. And what this conversation will do, even if they say no, is show them that you are actively looking at what you bring to the table as far as value goes and what other companies out there may be willing to offer you. It's really expensive to lose an employee and have to bring somebody back in. They want the relationship to be sticky. So they're motivated now to give you what you're asking for. And even if it's only a few $100s a pay run, that moves mountains over time and with compounding interest. And then this part is one that so many of us forget, especially if we're starting out. And that is protecting your plan so that life isn't going to wreck it. And that means protection. And yeah, that can be boring. But because we're starting over and it's not just about building, it's about keeping, right? My goal when I'm talking to someone is building their wealth, but then making sure they only have to build it one time. And here's how you do that. First, credit boundaries. You have got to protect your credit like it's your reputation. So many important decision makers can see it. Employers and banks, lenders, it's critical to your success. You want to make sure that you're always making your minimum payments. You're not overusing your cards. Keep that utilization low and treat it truly as a tool. Building credit is a hack, no matter what anybody tells you. And then insurance check. So your health insurance, auto, renters, homeowners. And this is something that I can even admit myself, you call, you put in place, and then it renews. But what it's not taking into consideration is how your situation is changing. So you need to be looking at this and figuring out if what you have, number one, making sure that it's as cost effective as possible. Don't spend more than you need to. And a lot of times, these companies will loop you in, get you to make a change, and then slowly creep the premiums up because they know that no one wants to shop out all of these insurances. So that's the first step. But also, if your deductibles are really high, or the premiums are really high, or the coverages just aren't enough because your wealth has grown, you need to audit these things. And it matters, you guys. These small premium increases add up over time and eat away at what you can invest or save. And it's a lost dollar. You're never getting it back. So don't let them take more of it than they're supposed to. And then you've heard me say this before. It's one of my favorite things, but please set up monthly meetings with yourself that are based on finances. In our house, we call them State of the Unions, but call them what you will, just have them. Make sure that you know where your money went, what you spent it on, what you invested it in, and make sure that there's nothing on there that's unexpected. Catch the mistakes before they're months out and just do a gut check. Realign yourself or congratulate yourself and shift your goals in direct response to what the prior month looked like. Now, if you're thinking about, okay, this all sounds great, how do I do it? Here's what I would do. Take a week, and in that week, set up a money snapshot. Make sure you're doing what we talked about in the beginning. Get a good, clear idea of where it's all going. Open a savings account. Make sure that that floor is being paid attention to and set up on autopilot. Automate that, but also automate the $25 things like extra towards debt or starting an investment account. And ladies, if you're listening to this and you're in a good place and you're investing, and let's say you're investing thousands a month, invest more. These rules are not for people that are necessarily in one income bracket or another. These are things that we all need to be doing. And then make sure that you're listing your debts and thinking about how you're going to pay those off. Give yourself a timeline, give yourself a plan. Set auto pays and don't deviate from the plan. And then set up investing and increase it by 1%, even if it's just with your employer. And then lastly, create an income plan. Think about one skill, one action, one ask that if you are in a W-2 role or working for somebody else, that you can have a little bit of control over the income that's coming in and not wait until an annual review to do so. If you don't know where to start, obviously, that's why I created Women in Wealth and why this podcast is here. The importance is having a resource that is giving you clear, confident, and doable action items, such as what I have in Finance 101 or what we talk about on social media or the podcast. Have the conversations. Find the mentors that have done the work, done the things, even if it's somebody that's just doing a little bit better than you are doing, and have the conversation, have the accountability partner. Don't try and figure it out on your own and then get lost and not move the needle. Nothing has to be done alone. This is what we're here for. So as I'm wrapping this up, remember that starting over isn't a defeat. Actually, it feels really good to wipe the slate clean. It means you're choosing to become the woman who runs her money instead of her money running her. And that is where true financial freedom and success starts in every single story. Drop me a message or a DM below, a comment, and tell me what you're doing to impact your financial story starting fresh in 2026. You never know who else is going to see that and create a ripple effect. As always, I so appreciate you tuning in and spending your time with me. And remember, we are changing the way women think and feel about money together.